ready? Zoning Board of Adjustment meeting, Monday, March 18th, 2019. I hereby declare this meeting of the Howell Township Zoning Board to be open. Adequate notice having been given pursuant to the New Jersey Open Public Meeting Act in the following manner. First, on January 15th, 2019, a copy of said notice was mailed to the Star Ledger and the Tri-Town News. Second, on January 15th, 2019, a copy of said notice was hand-delivered to the clerk of the Township of Howell. Third, on January 15th, 2019, said notice was posted in the office of the Zoning Board and on the bulletin board in the Howell Township Municipal Building, 4567 Route 9, Howell Township, New Jersey. In accordance with the Fire Prevention Code and your safety, please be advised that this facility is designed with 2 emergency exits, which are on your right at the front and rear of the meeting room. Furthermore, smoking is not permitted in the municipal building. Please take note that this meeting is being videotaped for possible future broadcast on Howell Township TV 77.
Thank you. We have a roll call.
Yes, you may. Mr. Hughes?
Here.
Mr. Massa?
Here.
Mr. Mertens?
Here.
Mr. O'Donnell?
Here.
Mr. Orozco has been excused. Mr. San Clemente?
Here.
Mr. Saya has been excused. Mr. Moretti?
Present.
And Chairman Nansen.
Here.
You have a quorum.
Thank you. Y'all stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the
flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mr. Tropoli, my swearing questions. Swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God. I do. The record should reflect tonight we have Mr. Mallon, Mr. Cunliffe, Ms. Bell, and Mr. Howard, all sworn for the evening. Thank you. Approval of minutes,
No minutes this evening.
vouchers,
No vouchers this evening.
correspondence.
No correspondence.
Oh, good. We're rolling right along. Resolution, case number BA 1825, EHAB Human Services, Inc. Resolution granting use variance, preliminary and final major site plan. Eligible voters: Hughes, Massa, Mertens, O'Donnell, San Clemente, Moretti, and Nansen. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Massa, seconded by Mr. O'Donnell. We have a roll call, please.
Mr. Hughes?
Yes.
Mr. Massa?
Yes.
Mr. Mertens?
Yes.
Mr. O'Donnell?
Yes.
Mr. San Clemente?
Yes.
Mr. Moretti?
Yes.
And Chairman Nansen?
Yes.
Resolution's memorialized. Thank you.
Okay. Application before the board, case number BA 18, L&L Paving Company, Inc. Use variance, preliminary and final major site plan. I am not going to read the description. It is on the record numerous times. Expiration date, March 31st, 2019. Eligible voters: Hughes, Mertens, O'Donnell, Roscoe, San Clemente, Moretti, Nansen.
And Mr. Massa is
Mr.
also,
Massa.
he has certified that he's watched all the videos that
Okay,
he's missing.
Mr. Massa is also eligible.
Yes.
Okay. Mr. Butler,
Good evening,
Mr. Dole.
Mr. Chairman. The last time we had left off, we had just finished with the cross-examination of Mr. Thompson, George Thompson. We are here to continue with Mr. Doyle's case.
And we'd also depose public also.
Correct.
Okay.
Mr. Thompson was presented, he was cross-examined, the public asked questions, and we closed out.
Okay. Mr. Dole, you ready to proceed?
Yes, I am. I would call Mr. Thomas.
Okay.
Mr. Thomas, who had testified earlier, we wish to put a map into evidence, and so we
Right.
will need him to do that.
He's already previously been sworn also,
Yes, and qualified.
and qualified.
That's correct.
Sign this.
Mr. Thomas, you placed on the, oh, I'm sorry.
That is going to be 08. Could you just tell us what that is?
Yes, it's a map, an aerial map, listing the routes from the site, and also lists the number of houses and their distances to the road.
Are we gonna see that up there?
What's that?
Are you gonna put that on the?
No, we don't have it.
I can't see it.
Do y'all have a
Well, you're not
smaller one?
alone, I can't see it either.
Is
I
there a
can't see
date on
what
it
you're-
or anything?
What you're doing.
And I imagine it's
What, hold
prepared
on.
by you?
This size?
If you do for the board?
Pass something around, or
Let me just.
I can't see it.
we pass it around?
I can't project it, no, it would have to be electronic for me to, I can pass it around to the board members.
We're trying to find out if we can put together an electronic version.
Okay,
We might have a minute, please.
okay. Take a moment.
Dude, that's fine, but for the planning board, it's no good.
What's wrong?
The board can't get on the M drive. Yeah, she does what you do.
Mr. Tropoli.
That's fine. Yeah, he's just gonna put that one up. Matt's doing that.
Pass it around.
Yeah, that's why I'm trying to get it.
You know, he called me today, but I don't know what he wanted.
Yeah.
No. Well, he rang on yours, then he rang on Janet's, then he rang on Caitlin's, then he rang on Beth's, and then he left me a message. And then when I called him back, he's in court all day. You're kidding me, right? Mhm. What are they doing?
What is the rule on that? Do you know? If the one we heard last week with the concrete block, if we wanna go see the site, do we just call, or should we go through Eileen? Okay. Yeah, well, yeah, when we did Allen, I went with, yeah.
But then you'd have to put it on the checklist, and then it has to go before the council.
Matt, are you gonna be able to pull something up if he emails it? Need it here though. Yeah.
trying to hope you get a little in there.
He's probably thinking, I didn't think he was so old.
Move it up here. I can't see it. If you saw, it was right here, you could see it. They work with the one he's got in his hand. So he's talking about it, we can see it. When you're not doing anything.
Also look at it this amount of time. Yeah, be prepared. I'm gonna grab a cup of water in case they start.
No, I missed that one.
Mr. Doyle?
Mr. Doyle, you have a problem just passing this down through the board?
The entire board? No, not at all.
The entire board.
Mr. Chairman, couldn't we make a photocopy of that one sheet there and pass it
It's not
around?
up to us to.
Provide copies.
It's their burden, not ours.
Mr. Chairman, we couldn't get that easel and put it here, we could all look at it close.
Just pass it down the board.
Actually, Herb holds it.
I don't have a copier here. I'd have to go all the way to the other end of the building, so.
Not gonna remember the shit. No, I'm not.
We have it.
Yeah, yeah, let's come up.
Oh, sir. No, I know, just go ahead and look at the board.
Thank you.
Huh? No, I didn't put them out. Because you'd have to send it to all their email addresses. It's easier for them to look at it up here. That's why I didn't put them out.
Okay, Mr. Doyle.
Mr. Thomas, what's the title on that map?
And Mr. Thomas, before you begin to qualify, I just want to confirm, you're testifying as someone who is qualified to prepare such maps as what's being marked as 08?
Yes, I'm a professional player in the state of New Jersey, and as I routinely prepare exhibits such as this as part of my testimony.
Okay, but you're not providing testimony as a planner.
I'm not providing testimony as a planner. This is just really a map and the facts I'll be stating tonight about the map.
I apologize for the interruption, I just wanted to clarify.
Thank you. So, Mr. Doyle, the title of the map is Routes to and from Proposed Site and Distances to Roadway from House, prepared March 15th, 2019. And this is an aerial base map from the NJDEP. The aerial base map is from 2015.
There's been superimposed upon that, I see a purple line, white lines.
That's correct. You can see in the middle, I've highlighted this site. It's kind of in a blue shade towards the middle of the map. I've also highlighted Yellowbrook Road, which is the purple line running basically north and south through the center of the map. To the top of the map, New Jersey Route 33, basically running in an east-west direction. Towards the bottom of the map is Adelphia Road, County Route 524. And then going east from the site is Cranberry Road, and I've highlighted that as well. So those are the routes around the site. The other things that I've highlighted, there's a number of notations along Yellowbrook Road, a few along Cranberry Road, and also a couple along Adelphia Road. And what it shows is the address of certain either houses or farmhouses and the distance from the house to the roadway.
How were those distances gathered?
And so the distances were gathered, there are approximate distances gathered through Google Maps. There's a measuring device that you can use on Google, and I measured it from basically the closest point of the house to the lane that's being traveled. For example, towards the top, you can see 6 Yellowbrook Road,
Just a quick question.
plus or minus 66 feet to the roadway.
Yes.
Yes.
Mr. Massey, a quick question. So if I look at 151 Yellowbrook Road, right over there.
Yes.
That is 85 feet to the purple line, approximately, plus or minus?
Plus or minus, that's correct.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. So I haven't highlighted all the houses. There are a number of houses along Yellowbrook Road. There's 29 in total. I've taken those from the county tax assessment records. They're either listed as single-family houses or farmhouses. And generally, on Yellowbrook Road north of the site, they're approximately 60 to 80 feet from the roadway. One Yellowbrook Road is actually 40 feet, 20 Yellowbrook Road is 103 feet. So I haven't highlighted all the distances along the roadway, but basically get an approximation. Yellowbrook Road south of the site, 3 houses south of the site, all of which are farmhouses. 144 Yellowbrook Road is 77 feet from the roadway. 142 Yellowbrook is 73 feet. And the third one, 151 Yellowbrook is 85 feet. We've also highlighted houses along Cranberry Road. 421 Cranberry Road is about 124 feet. And across the street, 422 Cranberry Road is about 78 feet. And then finally, there's a couple more. The Equestra development, there's 7 houses along West Da Vinci Lane. And I measured those about between 150 and 161 feet from Cranberry Road.
Sir?
Yes.
I have to disagree with you. If you look at the lot for that construction site across the street from L&L, I've been there numerous times. There must be 1,000 feet across.
Well, what I'm measuring is from the houses from the Equestra
Yeah.
down to Cranberry Road, not to the site.
Okay, so even so, you're not measuring the purple
Cranberry.
road, you're measuring the white road.
Yeah,
Cranberry.
right, that's correct.
Okay, so they're not all on the purple road?
No,
most of them.
just the houses along Yellowbrook Road I've measured.
Okay.
And then if you go down to Adelphia Road, I've measured a few of those houses. For instance, on the left-hand side of 141 Adelphia Road is about 88 feet, and that's to Adelphia Road from the house. 121 Adelphia, 82 feet, and then on the other side, 76 Adelphia, 114 feet. And that's basically it for the map.
Can I ask a few questions?
Mr. Doyle?
One question, is there any distances represented on that map between the houses and the site?
No, they're all measured from the house to the nearest roadway.
Okay, thank you.
Why are we,
What's your reasoning for
Yeah,
that? How come you didn't measure it, like, we have those 7 Equestra houses? Why didn't you measure from L&L location to those houses? How far is that away?
Mr. O'Connell, I've heard questions objected to when they were asked. I didn't ask a question. I don't think
Okay.
those distances were a part of the
But I
testimony.
want to know.
You-
It doesn't matter. I want to know how far it is. If you don't know, say you don't know.
That wasn't part of my map, and I didn't measure that distance.
Okay, so you don't know. Can we get a measurement?
No,
We can't?
no, not unless they provide it.
you said that you got this information from a 2015 aerial overhead,
Yes, that's correct.
and then you measured the distances using Google, I guess, a measurement tool in Google Maps?
Correct.
And that you used that 2015, the picture you're showing us right here to do that measurement?
Yes.
Okay. Did you go out and physically look at any of these properties to see if the measurements were correct?
No.
Do you know if all of these houses that you're showing are still presently on Yellow Brick Road?
I checked the tax assessment rolls. Yes, I did, and they're presently there.
Did you physically go out to these properties?
No.
Why did you choose these properties?
Basically, I didn't highlight all the properties or the distances. I just tried to get a select number of properties just to give you an idea of how close the houses are to the roadway.
And there's other houses on Yellow Brick Road and Cranberry Road and Adelphia Road that you did not include on this survey?
That's correct.
Okay. And once again, you didn't physically go out there, so you don't know if there's landscaping or if there's buffering in between those houses and these roads?
No, I simply just measured the distances.
Okay. No further questions.
Yeah, Mr. Mott.
How'd you pick these houses? Randomly?
Basically randomly, yeah, just trying to get a good idea of the distances to the roadway. If you see the houses along Yellow Brick Road, they are very similar in distance, so I didn't measure all of them. I'm just getting an idea of how close the houses
It
were.
was to get a picture, I'm surmising.
That's correct.
Thank you.
Did you do a certain percentage of the houses or just however many you thought looked right?
No, we didn't do a certain percentage of the houses. We just tried to get a representation of the houses and their distances away.
So I notice one Yellow Brook Road is 40 feet, and the homes on Equestria are 150 to 161. So you have a range from 40 to 161 and almost every decade in between. You have some 40s, 50s, 60s, et cetera.
Correct.
You didn't particularly look for the closest or the furthest?
One Yellow Brick Road is actually pretty close. It's only 40 feet away. But then if you go down to 20 Yellow Brick Road, it's 103 feet away. But generally, the houses on north of the site on Yellow Brick Road are between 60 and 80 feet.
So these were representative in your mind,
That's correct.
based upon a visual analysis?
Correct.
I don't have anything further.
Nothing further? Okay.
Mr. Dottie?
Evening.
Gentleman needs to be sworn.
Yes, please.
Sir, would you raise your right hand? Swear the testimony you give this evening will be the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God.
I do.
We have your name and spell your last name.
Norman Dottie, D-O-T-T-I.
Mr. Dottie, where do you live?
Point Pleasant, New Jersey.
And what is your occupation?
I'm a consulting acoustical engineer.
What does that mean?
I measure and analyze sound and vibration.
Would you give the board your educational background that leads you to that profession?
Sure. I am a graduate of Stevens Institute of Technology. It's where my Bachelor of Engineering degree is from. I have a master's from NJIT. I have a dozen postgraduate courses in acoustics dealing with microphones and accelerometers, acoustical materials, speech analysis, noise control, related courses, digital filtering, signal processing.
Have you testified before land use boards like this one in the past?
Yes, I've testified throughout New Jersey.
Have you testified before this board before?
I don't know if it was this board. I have testified in this room in front of boards, but whether it was this specific board, I don't recall.
And your expertise has been accepted by those boards?
Yes.
Any objection, Mr. Butler? We accept your credentials.
Thank you.
You may sit down if you would like, prefer. It's up to you.
Thank you. I'll stand for a moment.
Okay.
You haven't been present at the past hearings, have you?
No.
And you're not a traffic person or an engineer, but you are a sound person. What did you do to
I'm-
prepare for tonight's?
I am not a traffic person. I am an engineer. I'm a licensed professional
I'm
engineer. What did I do to prepare for this? I read several transcripts from prior hearings. I reviewed several reports that were submitted, a supplemental report. I reviewed there was a letter from the Environmental Commission on this matter.
Did you go to the site?
Yes, I've been at the site. I've driven up and down Yellowbrook. I'll apologize in advance if I call it Yellow Brick, but I just, and also Cranberry Road, stopped along the roads, took a few pictures.
You read the reports of Mr. Crossan?
I read two reports. Whether that is all that the gentleman wrote, I don't know.
And specifically with respect to the testimony, it was his testimony you read?
Yes,
And you're familiar that the application is for an asphalt manufacturing plant?
yes, I am.
Have you had done any work in terms of measuring sound, acoustical engineering with respect to asphalt manufacturing plants?
Yes, I have. This is my 47th year as a consulting acoustical engineer. I've had the privilege of studying multiple asphalt plants.
And I was remiss, I didn't ask about your service in government in terms of your profession.
My government service had nothing to do with being an acoustical engineer.
But you serve on the governor's noise?
Oh, if you, that government, okay. I am an appointed member. I was thinking of an earlier life. I am an appointed member of the New Jersey Noise Control Council, appointed originally by Governor Cody and subsequently reappointed. The council writes the noise regulation for the state of New Jersey. It writes the model noise ordinance, which I believe this community adopted a couple of years ago and was approved by NJDEP.
That said, what information can you share with the board about your perception of the report from Mr. Crossan?
As I said, I went through the report, and one thing that really struck me was, in my opinion, the lack of background information. Several sound levels are mentioned from different things, but how those were derived, where they came from, what they include, it just isn't there. Multiple references are made to modeling the site. I saw nothing, I'm not saying the gentleman didn't do it, but I saw nothing that said he did anything more than very basic calculations. By that I mean, as a rule of physics, there's something called the inverse square law that says, when applied to acoustics, as you double the distance from a sound source, you can expect to get a 6 decibel drop in sound level, all things else being equal. Now that ignores what's in the way and terrain and other things, but it's a rule of thumb that works fairly well over a few hundred feet, as long as things aren't in the way. That's the only thing. Now, is that modeling? I guess it could be, but to me, modeling, and I've modeled asphalt plants, a typical asphalt plant is going to have on the order of 40 to 50 different noise sources in it, not counting trucks and loaders and things like that. In the report, we have a number for the plant. It doesn't say anything about directionality around it. A plant, depending on where you are around it, is going to produce different sound levels for some distance from some mythical center. None of that's discussed in the report. So when I hear modeling, if one of my contemporaries says, oh, we're modeling a site, I would expect to see a commercial program like Sound Plan, which is what we use, or CADNA is another commercial program, that all this data is put into and an analysis is done on it. How sound propagates, for example, some mention is made of berms and barriers in the various, in the transcripts and in the reports. Well, how a berm and barrier interacts with sound is very dependent on frequency, very dependent. Yet the only thing he mentioned in any of the documents I read is the overall dBA sound level. Well, that doesn't tell me that anything was taken into account on the frequency effects of the barriers. So there really is very, very little in the transcripts, what he testified to, and in the written reports about how any of this stuff was done. So in fact, it's difficult to look back on and say, well, that's good or that's bad.
By the way, you said that the town's ordinance has been approved. That was different than his testimony given on page 30 of his revised report?
Yes, in the report, he mentions that the, let's see, I actually have it here.
And what's the date on that report?
I'll get to it as soon as I find it here. In the revised, I don't have the date here, in the revised, what's called the revised report, page 30, it says the township.
Mr. Doyle, do you know the date of that report?
He issued two reports. If it was revised, then I would assume it's the second of the two.
That's not what I asked. I asked what's the date?
I don't know the date of your expert's report.
I'm not providing testimony regarding my expert's report. I'm asking you what the date is.
I'm not even.
Okay.
So page 30 does say the township of, quote, the township of Howell has apparently not been submitted to NJDEP for approval. That's incorrect. It was in fact approved by NJDEP on February 20th of last year. I think the thing that I take the biggest exception to is the sound levels, specifically of the trucks. To me, a critical use is nighttime. As you may know, the state noise regulation, NJAC 7:29, and your ordinance has the same limits in it, namely 65 dBA at or within the receiving property in daytime hours, daytime being 7 a.m. to 10 p.m., and at night it's 50 dBA. So if all things else are equal, the night is a significantly tougher criterion to meet. Now, in all fairness, they talk about not operating the plant at night. They'd be bringing in trucks and loading the trucks up. Trucks coming in would be dumping grindings, that sort of thing. So they don't have the plant as a sound source at night. I can accept that. But the only thing as a sound source at night being the truck singular, he differentiates between trucks and truck, although he gives them the same sound levels. He has a number of 75 dBA. I'm referring to table 3 and 4 and 5 and 6 in his documents. 75 dBA. Took me a while to spot it, but it's in a column that says 75 dBA at 50 feet. And I said to myself, that's not too far off of what I would use. I use a number of 77 that comes from measuring trucks at many different facilities. So he used 75, but then there's a little tiny letter that has a footnote on it that says this is at 25 feet. Well, if it's 75 dBA at 25 feet, then using the rule of thumb, the inverse square law that I mentioned, and he references, that's equivalent to 69 dBA at 50 feet. That simply is not a correct number. Now, it may be what he used, but it isn't the same as my number, which is 77, to which somebody might say, well, how do we know, Mr. Dottie, that that's the right number? Okay, let's go to the Federal Highway Administration and their traffic noise model, and in the technical reference manual put out by the Volpe Transportation Center up in Cambridge, Massachusetts. The sound level that they give for 50 feet from a heavy truck accelerating in the 10 to 30 mile an hour range, as in driving around on a site, stopping, starting up again, is 80 dBA, which is a considerable difference from 69. That's 11 decibels different. So the calculations in the report that they are, where they talk about, well, at nighttime, we can comply with this, with the standard, would appear, using published data, 11 decibels low, which takes them over the nighttime limit by a significant amount. So I really have to question the numbers that are in the report, and we don't have, in my opinion, backup on it and to figure out what's going on in the thing.
What kind of backup should have been there that isn't?
Well, since the sound propagation is frequency-based, I would expect to see tables of sound levels, not just an overall dBA, but also broken down into what are called the octave bands. Again, references made to barriers. Barrier effects are frequency dependent. You can't assess anything if you don't know the frequency breakdown of the sounds. For a plant, I would expect to see similar information on multiple sources, at least the significant ones, because even at night, you're going to have other things that are going on in the plant. They may not be running the burner, for example, but there's going to be clamshell doors opening with pneumatics on them, possibly vibrators to move the material inside of the silos. There are other things that are going on. And then we have the trucks driving on and off the property. We just have a truck, for example, in figure 5 and 5, we see truck singular again, one truck at night at a distance of 600 feet. Well, the truck follows a route around the site. When we model a truck in operation, we take it from the site, where it enters the site, drive it around on the property, through the different stations it needs to go to, a scale, for example. It gets loaded up, it goes back and gets weighed at the scale, and then it drives off-site, maybe the same entrance, same way it came in, maybe a different one, but it's following a route. Well, when you do modeling, you take that truck, which is a moving sound source, and it's not a distance, it's at a whole bunch of different distances. And a model's capable of, so to speak, driving the truck around on the site and calculating the sound levels from all those different positions and presenting them to you. It is not what is mentioned in his documents. An LEQ talks about, an LEQ is an average sound level, and he says that LEQ is used in predicting of future noise level. This is on page 2 of the supplemental report. Not under NJDEP noise regulation, and the Howell ordinance it's not. It's a maximum sound level. It's not an average. There just is very little in the report and how someone can, and then when you couple that with knowledge of what are typical sound levels from these kind of operations, it just doesn't make sense. Not even close.
When you measure noise, for what period of time is it measured?
Well, it depends on the event. A continuous sound, that's the differentiate from an impulsive sound like a tailgate banging, okay? Continuous sound is one that lasts more than 1 second. So if you're doing an enforcement action, then you don't have to have a half an hour of sound above whatever the particular limit is. If the procedures allow for an occasional thing happening, but if it's a repetitive occasional thing, if you have 90 trucks driving onto the property all night long, every time one of those trucks goes by, that's, if it's over, that's an enforceable thing, even though it's for a short period of time.
The LEQ you referred to as an average, which is inconsistent with the idea of how it should be measured.
That's correct.
There was mention made of a berm and a wall. Would that reduce the dBA in the evening?
It could, depends on where it is relative to the sound source. If a berm or a barrier or a berm-barrier combination, they're all essentially the same acoustically, blocks line of sight from a sound source to a receiver, then it can attenuate sound if it's of enough substance. You can't put up a vinyl decorative fence and expect that to be a sound barrier. It has to be something substantial. A berm, of course, is substantial.
In order to identify it as an attenuator of sound, you'd have had to know where the noise was coming from, the height of the fence on the berm, and the line of sight.
And the frequency distribution of the sound, and the distances, and the elevations. For instance, for a residential receiver, at night in particular, typically look at, and even enforcement people will take measurements at a second-story bedroom window, if that's what the particular property has.
None of those were included in the so-called modeling.
I don't know what's in the modeling. He doesn't discuss any of that.
So the mere fact that there's trees or a 10-foot fence on a berm doesn't tell you enough to tell you whether there's any attenuation?
No, and in fact, trees are, he mentions trees, and I would not discuss, myself, I would not discuss trees when I'm discussing noise mitigation without adding the minor detail that trees are not an effective sound barrier. You put up 3 rows of arborvitae, 20 feet of pine trees, whatever, they simply are not a sound barrier. It takes hundreds of feet of dense woods to be an effective sound barrier. There's an international standard, ISO 9613-2, about a 350-page document that discusses all sorts of aspects of outdoor sound propagation, including trees. The number they use, unless you really get into it, but their default number is 0.5 decibels per meter. So what that means in something close to English is that it takes 100 meters of dense woods to give you a 5 decibel reduction. 100 meters, I do stuff in metric, sorry, is about 330 feet of trees. So you get a few hundred feet of trees in between something, then that can provide additional attenuation over what the distance provides. But a few trees on a berm, they don't do anything. They might look good, but they don't do anything acoustically.
Now, you talked about multiple sources of noise coming from the operation, more than just the plant. You mentioned clam clapping and lid banging. What are some of the noises that, from your experience, come out of an asphalt plant besides just the plant?
Well, vibrators, they're all tied, they're all part of the plant. Typically a loader is going to be scooping up materials from different piles to make up the mix that they're producing at that point in time, putting it into hoppers that are driven by conveyors that go up into a place where they're mixed. They go into the burner unit where it's heated and other materials are added in there. Material travels around on conveyors. It goes into different hoppers, silos as they call them. There are pneumatic valves, clamshell doors opening and closing. When they fill up a truck, the truck drives in, the clamshell opens up, they dump the asphalt, the particular mix, into the thing, the clamshell closes. You have motors going, you have fans, burner noise, really that travels. It's low frequency noise, burner noise really travels. There's a lot of different sound sources. So they said around 40 to 50 different sound sources in an asphalt plant.
Does not the loudest sound be the only one that is heard, or is it somehow cumulative?
Well, it is cumulative. You get into how decibels add up. Certainly, it's never going to be quieter than the loudest sound, but if you have, say, 10 sound sources that make a particular sound level, let's say 50. Well, 1050s, when you do decibel arithmetic, it's not 500, it's 60. So they do add up, and it all comes into the total combined sound output of the site. And then you throw in the loader running around and truck operations, and you have additional sound, only those are moving, which makes it even more interesting.
When you say moving, there's been testimony that there would be, if approved, 6 silos, each with the capacity of 300 tons, equaling 1,800 tons. And if they were put down in the road at night on a public job, for instance, at 20 tons a truck, there would be 90 trucks that would bring the millings in from the roadway, and then 90 trucks going out to bring the fresh asphalt to be put down. How do you figure that into your nighttime noise computations coming from the site?
I'm going to object to that question.
I have a question to Mr. Doyle. Your expert, Mr. Thompson, testified that there would be 40 trucks at nighttime operation.
I don't believe,
Go around,
I-
around Robin or whatever.
he said there would be 40 individual trucks in the operation, but the number of truck trips, he also testified that there would be 3,000 to 4,000 tons put down in the evening. I used a more conservative number than that by saying 1,800. The numbers that I took were all taken from the applicant's testimony. The silos are 1,800 tons.
I
put in this
understand,
choke.
but we went down this road with Mr. Thompson. You know, those are all hypothetical numbers. Sir, please sit.
They
They're
are not hypothetical numbers, sir. The numbers I used in my question, the silos have 300, a capacity of 300 each. That's from Ms. Sutton Choate. There's 6 silos. That's from their site plan. That multiplies to 1,800. Their number on the trucks was 20 tons. If you take 20 tons and divide it into 1,800, that's 90 trucks going out at night, 90 trucks going in. So those are not hypothetical numbers. Those are real numbers for a nighttime operation that this applicant says he intends to do. Having those numbers
Okay.
from him, I just asked a simple question. How does those numbers affect his testimony with respect to noise?
Okay. I'm not going to get in an argument with you over testimony.
I'm not arguing either, sir.
I know what was placed on the record, and they also said that they weren't going to use, each silo might have a different mix in it. It's not going to be up to a capacity. They gave a synopsis of what they were going to run at night. What you're doing is giving a maximum, the maximum that the plant can handle, and just going with it, that's going to be a per night operation.
That's, with all due
That's
respect.
not the testimony I recall.
No, there was no testimony differently that I recall from having read every piece of words in every page of every transcript that says that it was any different. The reason why Mr. Rendelli said they would operate at night is to get public work. Public work has certain requirements. That testimony was in. Ms. Sutton Choate testified that the trucks would be ready to take the 1,800. Ms. Cafone testified that the fact that that much could be stored made it a more efficient service and was therefore more appropriate, though that the 1,800 would be ready. Both of them testified that that could be manufactured before the 10 o'clock limit, so it could go out at one time between 10, not one time, but it was ready at 10 o'clock when the milling trucks would start to come back. That's all in the record. So there was nothing speculative about my question.
Okay.
I would like him to answer it then.
There was an objection. Would
I
you-
mean, I think you captured my objection. It is speculative. He's now also using a number of 20 tons per truck. I think it was a different number that was used prior. So, I mean, you have the testimony that was already provided in the record by my client, which I think undermines the probative value of this question.
I don't understand what Mr. Rendelli testified to that was any different than what I said, or Ms. Sutton showed, or Ms. Cafone. I quoted them exactly. They're all his witnesses. I think we all know there's going to be a number of trucks, we can say whether it's 60 or 90, going to be there on some evenings when they're doing a job. What does the effect of that number of trucks have on noise? His witness had free rein to testify. My witness should be no less able.
Okay, but okay, I'm gonna allow the question, I'm gonna allow you to continue, but just keep in mind, we're talking a 9-time operation. We're not talking 90 trucks at one time moving in and out through the facility.
Mr. Chairman, you're absolutely right. As Mr. Thompson rightly testified, and you quoted him as calling it a relay system, that's true.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, I got one question.
Yes.
Your testimony is just based on nighttime, not daytime and nighttime?
Most of my testimony is addressing the nighttime conditions because that's, as I said, that's to me is more critical kind of thing. Their reports do talk about daytime levels as well, but you get this free 15 decibel increase in the limit because you're doing things during the daytime. So, for example, shutting down the actual manufacturing of the asphalt before 10 p.m., that's a smart move. Still have to comply with the daytime limits. They will be making more noise during the day. But I would expect, for example, a truck driving on and off the site during the day and a truck on and off at night would be the same.
Tell me something. Right across the street from L&L Paving, there's a anchor block, a concrete place.
No.
During the day, they make the same noises, like 40 to 50 sounds, you said?
With respect, it's not across the street. It's up.
Well,
It's up.
it's a little ways.
Yellowbrook.
Well, you got Eastern Concrete across the
Oh,
street.
Eastern Concrete, all right, I stand corrected, it's Eastern Concrete. So they're both operating, they're both gonna have 40 to 50 different sounds during the day?
A concrete block operation.
No, it's not a block, concrete,
Oh,
ready
just
mix.
cut-
plant.
Okay, ready mix. Gentleman, I believe, said concrete block. That's
Well,
right.
he was talking anchor back
Okay,
up.
okay. A concrete plant is similar in that it has trucks driving on and off. It has loaders. It doesn't have burners. It's going to have conveyors, probably vibrators. So there are similar, certainly some of the sound sources are similar.
Okay, does one drown out the other?
No,
So,
it doesn't cancel.
but it would be louder if the facility, the one I'm talking about, is closer. It'd be louder to Equestria.
It depends on what sound it puts out.
Well, the other day I rode by there and I thought I heard a gun go off, and it was something that exploded. That was a process that they were doing.
Who's the day?
What day?
Anchor? No, who's the day?
Easter.
Anchor or Easter?
Easter,
In the daytime?
during the day, yeah. And it sounded like a shotgun.
If that's a repetitive process, if it was, say an emergency vent or something like that, that's exempt. But if every hour they do that, then potentially they'd have a problem. Somebody would have, whether you folks do it or the county comes out and does it and do an enforcement action on it, that potentially could be a violation. But I've not studied, I've been in all too many concrete plants, but I don't know this particular plant and what they do, so I can't compare sound levels.
Well, I'm trying to reason this out. You have Stavola asphalt there, you have L&L, and you have Eastern. Now, they're all operating during the day. They're all making a racket. So,
Excuse me, L&L isn't operating.
Well, they're operating what they're doing right now.
The paving company, you mean?
Whatever they do now, they're there, they're using their trucks, they're going in and out of place. I'm not saying they're operating as an asphalt company. And they all make noise, all three of them. So that's a lot of noise in one area.
And you got George Harms.
You know, and you got George Harms, so there's so much noise there, I don't see why you're zeroing in on one facility when there's so much other noise there. And, you know, I mean, there's gotta be,
Suggest we're honing in on.
you're honing in on L&L paving, they're
They're
noise.
the applicant.
Yeah, I know that,
Anchor
but
isn't
you're
here.
not including
Eastern
anybody
isn't
else
here.
to give me a fair understanding. You're dodging a bullet all the time. You know,
What
I
bullet?
know you don't want to incriminate Stavola or anybody else. You know, that's part of your case.
Sir, this is respectfully the second time, and through you to the chairman to council. We had Mr. Thompson attacked by you in his speech. We
Sir,
now have.
sir,
Oh,
you're out of line now.
sir.
You're out of line. You address me whenever
Okay,
you address.
Mr. Chairman, I believe the comments that we're dodging a bullet, and he aims and mentions Stavola, and why are we aiming at L&L, I think is somewhat prejudicial.
I don't.
Mr. Tropley.
I think that Mr.
Dottie?
Yeah, I'm sorry, Mr. Dottie can answer a question that's put to him. Sorry, Mr. Dottie. I believe you can answer any question put to you. I believe what Mr. O'Donnell has framed was a question regarding other ambient noise, if you're familiar with it. Yes. If you're not, you're not. You can answer in a general sense, yes. But as far as sniping back and forth, Mr. Doyle, again, everything should go to the chair.
I understand.
I think it's a fair question that was brought up by Mr. O'Donnell. I think, Mr. Dottie, if you can answer that question, and I believe the question Mr. O'Donnell had was, there are other commercial sites there that may have, no, you may not have any familiarity with it. But let's at least get an answer on the record, and we can move on from there.
Yes, please.
There was a lot of questions in my mind in there and things discussed. The way the regulation and your ordinance works is a site is a source unto itself. So if you had, hypothetically, I'm standing here and I have 4 different commercial industrial sites around me. Each one during the day by itself makes 65. Well, we have 2 65s are 68, and 2 more 65s are 68, and 2 68s are 71. So where I'm standing, even though each of the 4 sites is in compliance at 65, I'm getting 71. Now, it's assuming they all put out the same amount of sound, they're all on at the same time. So there is, in an industrial area, there is a cumulative effect. But what gets looked at is each one individually.
But collectively, you don't look at it.
No, I mean, you can measure it, and if you took a measurement there, you would measure theoretically 71. Now, you get into the problem from an enforcement standpoint of how do you pick out that one over there and whether they're making more than they should be when you have other measurements from other things over here. And that's part of what somebody's supposed to learn when they do enforcement stuff or when they've been doing it for 47 years.
Okay, that's a good answer, thank you.
Yes.
Excuse me if I might, I had a question pending, and then there was a discussion back and forth whether I could ask it, and you allowed me to ask it, and he never got to answer it, if I could have that
Okay,
question.
hang
At
just
some
a second.
point.
Go ahead.
Let's see if I can remember what it was.
Re-ask your question for the record, please.
Well, correct me if it was about the trucks and the number, the question wasn't about the number of operations, though there was a discussion about that. The trucks, whether it's 90 in and 90 out trips, not necessarily physically separate trucks, or 60 or whatever, they're split up, whatever. You're going to have heavy trucks driving down the roads at night producing sound. Well, any vehicle produces sound. Well, recall, and the applicant's expert specifically talks about sound and the standard and the basis for it. From page 2 of the supplemental report, Standards, I'm quoting, "The standards developed are health-based and are designed to prevent the deleterious physical effects that may result from exposure to excessive noise. The standards were based on information dealing with speech interference and sleep interruption." Sleep interruption is the basis for the nighttime limit, for example, from the commercial sources. Specifically, daytime sound levels were determined by speech interference criteria, while nighttime levels were dictated by speech interruption information. It further says, this level is, they're talking about the 50 dBA nighttime limit. This level is meant to protect sleep. The nighttime standard sets an outdoor permissible level of 50 dBA to achieve an indoor goal of 35 dBA, which is conducive to sleep. So the state limit says sounds above 50 dBA that are coming onto a residential site, onto a house, are capable of interrupting sleep. So what I wondered is, well, how loud are these trucks driving down the street? Because you're introducing, by granting a variance to have this operation, you're introducing a new sound source in the area, namely the truck traffic. And so I took the applicant's sound levels, remember the 75 dBA at 25 feet, my own sound level that I use, 77 dBA at 50 feet, and the Volpe Transportation Center, 80 dBA at 50 feet, and then looked at them at various distances. I don't know if we have a way to, I believe we prepared a graphic, whether it now. Well, that's why I requested that, I'm sorry, I don't remember the number, I'm sorry?
08.
08 is a plot showing various distances for residents along the routes of travel. And from that, and knowing what the sound levels are from the trucks, even using the lowest number that the applicant has, at 40 feet, yeah, oh, excellent. You mark this?
This is 09, and if you would please place a description on the record, and then, of course, we'll ask Mr. Butler if he has any objection.
Yeah, do we have a copy of that, Mr. Dole?
No.
For the board?
You want me to mark it? Oh, okay.
No, part of our notes.
Just pass it down.
09 is a graph that I prepared. It shows on the horizontal axis distance from a sound source to a house. The vertical axis is dBA sound level. There are 3 colored slope lines. Those represent the sound levels decreasing with distance for the 3 different sound sources, whether you accept the 69 dBA at 25 feet,
Where
I'm
does
sorry,
that one
50
come from?
feet.
Where does the 69 come from?
That's from the applicant's expert, and his tables were used the 75 dBA at 25 feet. You double the distance to 50 feet, subtract off 6, you get 69.
Can we pass it down the board? Please. Yes, sir.
Mr. Butler, do you have any objection?
No, I don't have any objection.
Okay, we're going to ask the board to take a look at it. It's being passed up at this point.
If maybe he can identify what there are some, well, what are the 3 lines?
But let the board look at it first, perhaps, in this way,
Yeah.
the
Right.
question, if you would hold the question for a
What was that?
moment and
And the answers.
just hold
Whenever
the
we look at
testimony
it,
for a
then you
few
can
minutes.
point out your question,
Okay.
or for the identification.
Mr. Chairman, would you like me to just wait, or do you want me to
Yeah,
describe what's on it?
Yeah,
let us, so we know what you're talking about.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Chair, the professionals are also going to need.
Yes, correct.
Mr. Chair.
While we're looking, this is based on roadway travel, correct? Not facility travel.
That's correct. It's for a heavy truck at 40 miles an hour.
And it's based on existing conditions or non-existing conditions?
Well, it's based on, it's the average, for the Volpe data of 80, it's based on the average paved road.
Okay.
They
now-
have concrete, they have asphalt, if you go in and dig into the data, there's slight variations,
Right.
you know,
But it.
1 or
but
2
My
decibels.
question is, there's an existing, there's existing truck traffic there now, 24/7.
I understand that. I've not been there 24/7, but I believe that there's trucks traveling up and down the road.
Right.
Mr. Chairman. Yes, sir. Could we get a photocopy of that so we could look at it rather than be passing around placards?
We're moving it.
Mr. Chairman, I have a question for one of our professionals.
Okay. You can ask that.
I could ask him?
Yes.
We can take a picture of it and then transmit it, and so it could be up there shortly.
Matt, I have a question for you. Right now, in that general area, we have Eastern Concrete, we have Anchor, Ezo Asphalt, and Stavol Asphalt. Is there any ordinance on the record that none of them could operate at night?
No, the noise ordinance will
So-
usually prevail
So
on,
they're all free to operate at night if they want to? Is that correct?
as far as I know.
Okay, thank you.
Well, what does the SED say? That's the whole thing.
There's no time limit within the ordinance on the SCD zone specifically.
Okay.
If I might, Mr. Howard, do you know whether concrete plants like Anchor operate in the evening?
I don't have that knowledge.
I don't think they do. I know they get shipments at night. You know, there's trucks running in and out of there at night. Not concrete. Okay.
It would help.
Waiting.
Did the profession, did y'all look at that? Okay.
Did you want to see the smaller one, Mr. Chairman? Pass it
Uh,
around.
It's the
Mr.
same.
Massa, do you want that smaller one right there?
Well, I thought maybe we would have a photocopy for the board, but I guess not.
Yeah.
I observed the demerits.
Whatever.
Yeah, it's the same thing.
Yeah, I saw that.
Okay.
Yeah, we saw that.
He's gonna put it up. Mr. Butler, you had a question?
If maybe Mr. Dottie could identify what the three different colored lines are? What those
I was working on that,
Here.
but then we got into copies,
okay.
understandably. So and perhaps if we're projecting it, I can do that right now if you prefer?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, please.
So the three lines, bottom diagonal line is the sound level based on the applicant's consultant of 75 dBA at 25 feet, and then extrapolating that out to various distances with a 6 dB decrease as you double distance from the source. So at 50 feet, it's 69. At 100 feet, subtract off another 6, it's 63, and so on. The middle line, the red one, same concept. It's using the number that I've seen other folks like me use of 77 dBA at 50 feet. So if it's 77 dBA at 50 feet, then at 100 feet, it's 6 less, which would make it 71 and so on, out to, I believe I went out to 200 feet there for all of them. And then the top one is the 80 dBA at 50 feet from the Federal Highway Administration, Volpe Transportation Center, for heavy trucks. This is in a cruise condition, not accelerating. It's several decibels louder. So, and that's what those graphs, those lines are. Then there are 5 vertical dash lines to mark off different typical distances. I heard someone, I think one of the board members made some mention when we were discussing the graphic with the different distances about breaking it into various groups of distances, and that's exactly what I did. So typical distances from 40 is the left-hand vertical dash line out to 120. You have some houses a little closer, some houses a little further. Among the ones that were identified, there you go. So, for example, if you take...
Can I just ask one question? The blue line, you mentioned it was some from a Federal Highway Transportation study? Was that what that was from?
Federal Highway Administration traffic noise model, specifically the technical reference manual is published by the Volpe Transportation Center in Cambridge, Massachusetts.
Mr. Dottie, these are all of your testimony is based on what the standards are, correct? Did you actually do any noise monitoring?
No,
You didn't do any noise
I did
monitoring?
no noise monitoring. There's nothing out there for me to measure right now.
Existing trucks during the day,
No.
no measurements?
No.
What about, okay, let's take the house on Cranberry Road. Did you do a test monitor, a sound monitor there?
I did no sound testing on or around the site.
Okay.
Are you aware of whether Mr. Crossan did any of the kind of testing the chairman just inquired about?
Yes, it's in the report
Okay.
That he did?
that he did, yes.
Okay. I was just clarifying your answer, that's all.
Sure.
Kind of.
Can I ask another question?
Excuse me, I haven't finished my direct.
I know, and it's simply, I'm trying to, he rambled off what the blue line was. I was trying to take a note because I want to find that study. So I want to make sure that I'm correctly looking at the
I
document.
don't know
that
what
he's citing
rambling
to.
means, but if you would speak more slowly then, so he can have it.
Okay. The blue line, where did that come from?
The top
Yeah, you're,
diagonal line.
yes.
That's taking the data from the Federal Highway Administration Traffic Noise Model Technical Manual.
Okay.
You'll find that if you go to the Google the Volpe Transportation Center and look up the TNM, which stands for Transportation Noise Model, and the Technical Reference Manual, you'll find this multi-hundred-page document full of stuff.
And what year is that, what year is the manual that you're
That
looking at?
particular report, no, it's not annual. That
No, I said,
particular.
what the manual that you were looking at,
Yeah,
what was
technical
the?
manual.
Yeah,
It's called the technical manual.
yes, I was just asking, what was the year it was published? So I don't know if there's
Oh.
other ones
That-
in different
no,
years.
It's a very stable thing, 1998.
Okay.
And if you go in there, you'll find tables and graphs for different kinds of vehicles, motorcycles and buses and automobiles and light trucks and heavy trucks and medium trucks. I used heavy trucks, and I used it as it says at the top, cruising trucks. I didn't use accelerating trucks.
Of course.
Hang on. Okay.
So,
Vanessa.
to allow for I'm sorry,
Quick question. What is RA?
Russell Acoustics. That's my data, that's my graph.
That's your
My data, RA is
RA?
Russell Acoustics.
And the claimed is what the
From the
applicant is
report,
saying?
yes, sir.
Thank you.
And then, of course, the FHWA is the
Yes.
transportation model thing.
Thank you
That's-
very much.
That's a federally funded, nonpartisan, if I might, study.
I would hope so.
And Volpe was the former governor and secretary of transportation it's named after?
John Volpe, I don't know, but it's the
Okay.
Volpe Transportation Center.
right,
I was
thank you.
just up there for a noise course. So the way you can read this is, for example, if you take that vertical line at what this is 40 feet, that's 40 feet back from the roadway, a house that's 40 feet back. If you use the applicant's data, we're looking at a sound level when it passes by of about 71 dBA. If you use the Volpe levels for trucks, you're talking about 82 dBA when a heavy truck goes by a house 40 feet away. If you go on out to the other end, 120 feet, that would be that would be the rightmost or fifth over vertical dash line. We're looking at, for 120 feet, using the applicant's data, approximately 62 dBA, and the Volpe data about roughly 72 dBA. And down at the bottom, I point out that the state says sound levels in excess of 50 dBA at a house are sleep interfering. So what's proposed is to add, I mean, I'm not going to debate number of trucks. I'll let you all work that out. But you're adding truck traffic at night, even however you want to split it up to the different roads, that are clearly capable of sleep disturbance.
When you say heavy trucks, define what you mean by a truck that is heavy. Does it have to do with the weight, the tandem, the axles, what it's carrying?
It ultimately comes down to weight. So it's large dump trucks, tandems, tractor trailers, those are all heavy trucks. If you again dig into the manual, they will give you weight classifications for those. In
So,
my opinion, using heavy trucks, pardon me, is the appropriate thing.
so a truck carrying 20 to 25 tons of material would be a heavy truck.
Yes.
The interference with sleep you mentioned is a standard that the applicant's expert spoke of, correct?
I don't know if he speaks of it as a standard, but he certainly references it and describing where the 50 dBA number comes from. That's a direct quote from his reports.
In answer to Mr. O'Donnell's question about several noise sources during daytime, you used the term, well, you get a free 15 at daytime. What did that mean?
The daytime limit or threshold is 65 and it's 50 at night, hence 15 difference.
You mentioned about trucks accelerating and cruising. Are those lines showing cruising trucks?
Those are cruising trucks, not accelerating.
What's the difference in sound?
For the same speed, the same vehicle, accelerating couple of decibels, roughly, louder.
Okay.
I
Now,
didn't think it was, I took it out on the road. I felt that cruising was a more representative thing than to say, well, let's take them at max acceleration, for example. On the site, that's another story.
now, with respect to putting the two charts together, what do you then conclude with respect to the additional truck traffic that does not currently exist on Yellowbrook and Cranberry that would come from this site with respect to houses shown along those two roadways?
On the first exhibit, again, I apologize, what was the number?
Oh, wait.
08. On 08, we see a smattering of different houses at different setbacks. I use that in picking my typical vertical lines over there, the 40 to 120 feet. Depending on whose numbers you want to believe, I mean, throw mine out, but you have the Volpe data to deal with, which is even louder than mine, or you take the applicant's, which I contend is still contend is extremely low. In all instances, whether it's a close-up house or one back at 120 feet, you have sound levels that are noticeably well above the 50 threshold for sleep disturbance.
You mentioned that you thought that the applicant's expert had numbers that were extremely low. You mentioned that in respect to daytime. Is that equally true at nighttime?
I was talking about it in particular regarding the trucks.
Okay.
Yeah, Mr. Moretti.
I believe in some of the testimony, they were saying that there's an acceptable amount of noise on the highway from trucks. I think it was 75 DPC, what is it?
DBA.
DBAs, acceptable noise level of 75 on a roadway. For example, on Yellowbrook Road, a truck going down there, the acceptable noise level on that road is 75, but on the site, it's less. Am I wrong on that? I think that was part of the testimony.
I don't know what you're referring to. I'm not disputing whether that's what was said or anything like that.
No, what I'm trying to say is that you're talking about down Yellowbrook Road, all those
Or
houses.
Cranberry, same one. These sort of sound levels.
Well, I'm
are what-
not talking about Cranberry. Not talking about Cranberry. I'm talking about Yellowbrook Road.
Okay.
As we're going down Yellowbrook Road, these houses are 65 feet,
Well,
40 feet, 120 feet, so forth. But there's an acceptable level of noise by a truck on Yellowbrook Road of 75, if I'm correct.
I don't know where that, I've never heard such a thing.
I thought that was part of the testimony? No, there was no,
There is an acceptable noise level at night and at daytime. That's, I feel was testified to. But I don't know the exact
all right,
number.
well, forget my number. What is an acceptable level of noise on that roadway, just traveling a truck? Just an acceptable noise level of a truck traveling down that roadway? Heavy-duty truck, as we're talking about here now. What's an acceptable level of noise?
There's no standard on what is acceptable or isn't acceptable on that. I'm simply saying here that the sound levels that we can expect to have produced by these operations are well in excess of the sound that the applicant has said will interfere with sleep.
But that's coming off the site, from
That's
the site?
No.
From
sir.
the site?
I'm talking, this is all on
On
the
the roadway.
road.
On the roadway,
Now,
okay.
as far as the site goes, those same trucks, they calculate that they will be, excuse me a second, let me check for sure here. From the report table 5 and 6, they give projected sound levels, 48 dBA. This is from the site, and that is from a truck singular operation. Except, I suggest that using their own data, that 48 dBA is based on assuming that the truck is making 75 dBA at 25 feet, or 69 dBA at 50 feet, which is a number that is on the order of 8 to 11 decibels lower than what my experience is, or Volpe says. Well, if you use the Volpe figure, their projected level of 48 is in fact 11 decibels low.
But does your calculations and Volpe's calculation take into consideration the berm that they're putting up with the trees?
Again, trees.
No, forget the trees,
Okay,
forget the trees,
okay.
the berm.
I don't know, no, they don't, because I don't know
So
where the
with
berm is.
But the berm,
I can't do it.
Yeah.
Nobody
Well,
can do it because
okay.
we don't know where the berm is.
Well, how many feet do you calculate that the applicant's witness took his measurement of a truck moving around the site? How many feet was that to the nearest resident? Did you take in consideration
You
that?
can't tell that from the report. He has a number, he gives 75 dBA at 25 feet.
Correct.
How he measured it or whatever. in
But it was in the
his
testimony.
defense, if you will, you don't measure, if I want to know what it is at a bunch of different houses, let's say, it's not practical, and there's too many other variables to drive that truck around on the site and then measure it back 800 feet away, for example. So what you do is you set up a test situation where you have a truck driving back and forth, you're on a path where you know the distance, you mark it down on the ground, or you use a rangefinder or whatever, you get the sound of the truck driving by, you do it around the truck in a couple of different angles. If it's a refrigerated truck, you do other things, and you come up with a nice clean measurement of how much sound energy, what's called sound power, the truck emits. Now, using real modeling and engineering formulas and stuff like that, I can reliably, I suggest, extrapolate that sound. If it makes this much sound at this distance, then over here, at some other distance, with or without a berm in the way, with the road surface, which sound travels different across a paved road than it will sand and gravel, etc. I can take that and say, okay, I project this sort of sound level over there at the home. And that's what they've done. I don't know, there's nothing that says they did all the fancy stuff that I just talked about. I think they just did a simple distance extrapolation. I can
No, sir,
reproduce it.
there's testimony on the record. If you reviewed the record, there is testimony that they did actual sound levels at certain intervals.
I understand that. Yes, sir. I agree.
Okay,
But in table where they project what the sound levels are going to be from the truck operations at night, that's not what they did. They took a level of 75 dBA. Again, I'm looking at tables 5 and 6 from their report. They took 75 dBA at 25 feet and extrapolated it out to 600 and 800 feet and came up with 48 dBA, quote, projected max at receptor. That's what they did, and I can reproduce it just as I described it with my calculator.
no, I understand that. But wouldn't that 600 feet tell you that they were that they had a footage from there to the nearest house?
Oh, they measured, whether they used Google Earth or however they did it, they got the 600 feet from some distance. Now, where the truck was, to be 600 feet away, they don't say,
Right,
which is 600 feet or 800 feet.
okay.
And that was the noise from a
Okay.
truck, not all of the other myriad of things happening at this at the site.
Well, to me, truck is singular. Trucks, they don't allow for multiple, doesn't include the possibility of multiple trucks. I would expect several. I wouldn't begin to suggest that they're going to have 40 or 90 trucks on the site all at one time running around. But 2 or 3 or 4 trucks at one time, that's, from my experience, that's feasible. And you have a loader, but that's not in there.
When the word acceptable was used in terms of a noise level, is there any level of noise in the evening that you can say is acceptable other than the legal standard of 50 dBA after 10 o'clock?
Well, the basis for sleep disturbance, as the state has defined it, is 50. So
So somebody can live with 60, but the law says it's like traveling down the highway at 60 miles an hour. If it's a 50-mile-an-hour speed limit, you're exceeding what the law is.
if the sound is 60 and 50 at night outside the house can induce sleep disturbance, then
I guess we have to, basically what you're testifying to is that we ought to start complaining because they shouldn't be running businesses down that road at all.
That's what I was just gonna
Has
ask.
there been
Because-
any testimony in the record about the amount of noise existing ambient?
there is, I don't know, there are tables in the reports where they measured sound levels out there.
Correct.
And the applicant, and let me read you this quote from the applicant. This level, meaning 50 dBA, is meant to protect sleep. You would agree with that?
Yes.
He goes on, the nighttime standard sets an outdoor permissible sound level of 50 dBA to achieve an indoor goal of 35 dBA, which is conducive to sleep Is that a recognizable standard said by the applicant with which you agree?
That's a quote, what the applicant said in their report and is what the state of New Jersey says.
Mr. Dorr, we're not questioning that.
Oh, I understand.
But the thing about it is, we're talking about roadway noises that exist today. You know, that exists today. You know, whenever they run asphalt out of there, you know, when Earl's running or anybody's running, they're running up and down that road existing today. You know,
We're not talking, maybe the board is, but respectfully, the applicant is not talking about today. The applicant is talking about the tomorrow.
even in the
that
future,
is-
it exists as it is now.
No, whatever number of trucks it is that would come out of the L&L nighttime operation do not exist now. It is a very simple matrix. The L&L application, if denied, will not produce the noise that their trucks would have because there won't be trucks. If it's approved, then the trucks will add to the noise that is there, but independently, each time they make a trip, and as Mr. Dottie suggested, looking at the standards, most of those trucks, in relationship to the noise they make and the houses they pass, will exceed the standard that
Well,
both experts have said.
it exceeds now.
No.
It doesn't? It really doesn't.
No, what I'm saying is there's no L&L trucks now to exceed
No,
it.
that's not what I'm saying. What I am saying, there is an existing condition now. You're saying that
I'm not testifying, and it isn't a question of what exists. It's a question of whether there should be a new noise generator that has the capacity, according to both experts, to interrupt sleep.
okay.
This,
I just want to move on. Let's move on.
Mr. Dottie, in your opinion, will the granting of this application result in the interruption of sleep as quoted by the standard quoted everywhere in the houses that were generally shown in 08?
The addition of trucks by granting the variance, and therefore this application will add additional sound sources, A, in the neighborhood, but B, also on the on the roads, driving by, and even by the applicant's own information, the resulting sound levels will be capable of interfering with sleep. So in addition to whatever's out there now, there will be more.
Nothing further.
Professionals.
What's the difference between the noise generated by the trucks you looked at versus, say, a garbage truck or a moving van, something that would probably be in a residential area anyhow, that might be larger?
If it's a moving van, is it driving around, is it A, is it loaded, and B, is it moving at 40 miles an hour in the residential area?
If it's driving down Yellow Brick Road loaded.
Okay, down Yellow Brick
Yellow-
Road, yeah, that would be, in my mind, a heavy truck, and it could be comparable. As I said, as the chairman pointed out, and I pointed out, there are existing sounds out there now. The question is, are we going to add yet more of them
And,
by granting a variance?
okay, thank you. So what do you think is an appropriate distance to look at the impacts of noise outside of the site? Like, are you going to look at the impacts, do you think it's appropriate to look at the impacts of the sound generated from trucks a mile away that came from the L&L site, or 200 feet away? What's the appropriate distance where the
If I-
impact is no longer just on the surrounding area?
Well, if I took your question and your example of a mile away to mean the truck is coming from a mile away, it's not the truck, how much sound does the truck make when it's a mile away at the home over here?
Correct.
Okay. Well,
So-
wherever it comes from, it's coming to or departing from the site, and I'm just looking at it in the vicinity the immediate vicinity,
What it-
Cranberry, or, I forget Cranberry, Yellowbrook Road.
So
Homes along there.
what do you think is an appropriate area to take into account the impacts of noise generated from the site off of the site?
If it's traveling by the homes on Yellowbrook, then whether it's going 1,000 feet away or a mile away, it doesn't matter. It's still making that sound for the people who live in the vicinity.
Okay, thank you. And then I just have one more question. In looking at the graph you provided, I'm just a little bit confused by the scale. So if you could maybe explain why the increments get closer together the further out you go?
That's because it's a logarithmic scale.
Okay,
6 dB is your double distance. If you don't use a logarithmic scale, then you don't get the straight slope down there. If you use a linear scale, then the graphs do a curve, and they're harder for most people to read.
okay, thank you.
Mr. Mallon?
Yeah. Mr. Dottie, so your testimony basically is reference to trucks on the road itself, correct?
I talked about trucks on the road, but I also talked about operations on the site.
Well, how can you analyze operations on the site when you didn't look at a map or their proposal where their berms are going to be? To me, if you're reading a report, you would look at, because you're making comments on it, wouldn't you look at the map to see where the raised berms are going to be and see how they would dissipate?
If they had bothered to put in their reports where those sound sources are, then I might have been able to do that, but they don't talk about that. That's part of what they don't talk about in their reports.
But you made comments reference to trucks on site and basically attacked the report or the comments without, to me, it appears you didn't look at the existing plans to show whether they were doing any type of a dissipation or
Delineation.
lessening of the sounds. I agree with you. You take almost 200 foot of woods in order to dissipate the sound. But here you're doing berms or walls. I mean, you watch the state highway, they got away from putting the arborvitaes and things in. They now use a sound wall because you can't dissipate the noise. But here, if you look at them, now I agree their berm is not continuous. There are spaces in between, but they do quite a bit of berm work to dissipate the sound. And obviously, you haven't looked at what effect that would have from the on-site. You did say, though, that the roadway you can't dissipate.
I've seen drawings, and I noticed, as you pointed out, I would categorize the berms I saw as landscaping berms. There's a mound of dirt, then there's a gap, and a mound of dirt, then there's a gap. Very ineffective as sound barriers. They need to be continuous because sound doesn't just go over the top of a berm, it goes around the sides of the berm. So right there is a problem. But I would have loved to have been able to do what you just asked about, but they didn't tell us in anything they presented where the sound sources are. They just talk about 800 feet. Is it behind the berm? Where behind the berm? They don't give any of that information. They don't give anything about the frequency distribution of the sound because, as I said, berms and barriers are highly frequency dependent on their sound reduction. They simply don't have the stuff in the report to do the kind of analysis that your engineer is asking, why wasn't it done? Well, that's a great question. Why wasn't it done? I can't do it because they didn't supply the information. They supposedly could do it, but if they did, I haven't seen it.
Yeah. No further questions.
Any further questions from the board?
Yes.
Mike?
Mr. Dottie, are you familiar with the Aztec plant that's going to be making the asphalt?
I know the name, but I don't know. Is that
That's
that
the
thing is
manufacturer
manufactured?
of the plant. Are you familiar with
Yes.
them?
I've worked with them in the past.
Okay, so they've testified that you could make a cell phone call while that plant is running. You know if that's true? That's what they've testified.
I'll have to find that testimony, and, if you were in the control room, I suppose you could.
No, they said they're right on the plant, standing right next to it.
I don't know what they said in that regard, but I assure you, just for my own curiosity, I will go find that
Okay.
and look at what they're talking about. I know the Aztec equipment, and I might add, I know the kind of data that they can supply on their equipment. Very detailed, excellent data.
Yeah, saying it's very quiet. The report that you said from 1998, the Volpe report,
That's the last issuance of the Volpe data. Yes.
so this being 2019, would trucks be quieter as opposed to 21 years ago?
At that speed, it's principally tire noise, and it's not going to be significantly different.
Even the
And
tires of
I'm not
20 years?
counting even, I did some work with the New Jersey State Police out near Phillipsburg on the interstate where they, not me, pulled over trucks and we did testing on them. We were looking at mufflers and the Jake brake issue, for example. The simple answer to your question is no. They're not substantively different in the way that it matters in this situation.
So the design hasn't changed or anything?
The design
like
has,
that,
but not at speed. At very low speeds. If you go to a distribution center, for example, I've done a lot of those. People find, my impression is people are amazed when I say that you take a modern tractor trailer, it's pulling a 53-foot trailer, that sort of thing, around a yard. You really have to be careful when you're walking so that you don't step out in front of one, because they're so quiet when they're cruising like that. They're low power, they're moving slowly, they're really very quiet. They're not the belching behemoths that people like to categorize them as. But on the highway, no.
So when a truck is driving on Yellowbrook, and let's say there's one of the houses just past, yeah, if you can just take that. So let's look at the house on the left side of Yellowbrook, right above site, the word site, right? Yeah, that house there.
Hold on, Mr., hold on, let me just get the mic so we can hear him.
Oh, he needs a microphone. Okay, yeah, 40. Or you can just look at it from.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So a truck coming from Adelphia onto Yellowbrook, the person's at 43 Yellowbrook, they're gonna hear that truck coming.
Are you talking about a truck coming to the site?
Yeah, coming
So
to the
it- but
site,
isn't it-
coming off of Adelphia,
Okay, so it's
Traveling
traveling north on
north, yeah.
Yellowbrook, right?
They're gonna hear that truck, right?
At some point, now, but it turns in, it doesn't drive past them
Yeah,
to turn
okay,
into
yeah,
the
I
site.
didn't finish yet. So you're not gonna hear too much of that. It's gonna pull in. We know on testimony that the silos are about 600 feet in, and even at night, that truck's gonna pull in and get the materials and now head out. And they're gonna go travel north onto 33. What speed would they be going, coming out of the site, heading north at the 43 Yellowbrook Road?
I can't tell you specifically what speed they would be. I think from being there, and so I think the 40 number that I use is a reasonable figure. If you said that it's 30, it really doesn't change the sound level very much at cruise conditions at all. At 50, which I think, my recollection, I may be wrong, I think the speed limit's 40 there, but at 50, it might be 2 decibels louder.
So if they're coming out at about, let's say, because these are big trucks by the time they get going. If it's at 20, 25 miles an hour, is that going to still be as loud as 40?
Cruising at 25 is maybe 3 decibels less, but are they accelerating? They're coming from they pull down on the road, so now they're accelerating. So now the sound level at 25 is up to 80, and if they pass by at 40 miles an hour and they're still accelerating, then it's about 81 or 82.
Okay, and how long is that 80 decibels at 43 Yellowbrook?
It's a pass by, so sound builds up to it, maxes out at 80 or whatever the max is, and then drops down again.
So then what would it be 10 feet, 20 feet past 43 Yellowbrook?
Pass meaning back in.
Still going north, but now they
Oh.
passed that house.
When it passes by, essentially the same level. I don't think there'd be an appreciable speed difference change in 20 feet.
Now, was that, because you said something about 1 second is a constant noise?
I said the state defines continuous noise
Continuous noise.
as 1 second duration.
So how long do you think that 80 decibels will be as that truck drives by?
Momentarily.
So is that consistent noise, or is that, well, what's the other categorized noise?
Impulse.
Is that an impulse?
No,
or is
it's
it-
not an impulse.
That's not an
No.
impulse. And what's the acceptable level of an impulse?
80 peak. Excuse me, 80 impulse.
Which equals decibels, is that a decibel?
80, yeah, 80
So
dBA peak, or excuse me, impulse.
So either way you look at it, it's going to be 80 as that truck.
Those numbers happen to be 80, that they're the same, but there's nothing magic about that.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Any other questions?
Yeah, I have one. Does the acceleration of pushing on the gas, wouldn't that have make a big difference with the noise level?
Whether the truck is cruising or accelerating,
Yeah.
accelerating means they're got the pedal to the metal, as the saying goes, and are accelerating, going faster.
But when they're leaving the site, wouldn't they be that's when they're going to be having more peak noise going into gear, starting up from a start position? And as they move further down the road, the noise level's going to go down. Would that be true?
No, it's not.
Okay.
You get transitions, why a truck or a car or a bus makes sound and where it comes from on the vehicle varies with speed. So at lower speeds, the magic threshold is 35 miles an hour. At lower speeds, it's primarily engine and exhaust noise that you're getting. As you start going faster and faster, the tire noise becomes more and more significant. So there are different sound sources, but in the overall scheme of things, it's just total sound, and it does, as things go faster,
The tire
they get
noise
louder.
would go up, but the exhaust noise would go down.
No, the tire noise becomes dominant.
Yeah, what I'm saying is, at a lower speed, the acceleration, the exhaust is going to be higher, and as it goes faster, then it's the tire's noise.
Yes.
Okay.
That's correct.
Okay.
And as they approach a cruise speed, then they're going to back off on the throttle.
Okay.
No other questions. We're going to take a 10-minute break, and then we'll reconvene.
The zoning board will now reconvene.
Okay, Mr. O'Donnell, what was your question?
I'm not familiar with the area as well as you are. Can you identify, on Cranberry Road, there's a very large lot. What construction companies are they? That's Harms,
right here.
okay,
This is vacant, this was future.
right, and the next two?
The next, this is ESO,
Asphalt, right?
Asphalt, yeah, they're an asphalt company.
Okay, and the next one?
Back over here, this is a county, Montgomery.
It's a county yard.
Yes, and then the driveway going back here is Campo. Jack, isn't that Campo back there?
Yeah.
That's in the back here?
Okay, thank you. Mr. Howard, I have a question for you. The names of the companies that Mr. Nansen just named are directly across the street from Equestra. Looks like they're pretty close. I would like to know how many complaints, not this year, last year, for the whole year, that was lodged against those three places. I'd like a total.
I'd have to take a look in it to be sure, but I'm not aware of any.
You're not aware of
And
any?
the complaints come through my office. I usually look at every complaint that comes in. I'm not aware of any complaint on those properties.
Could you give a letter to the board, official, double check it?
By the
if
next
there's one,
meeting?
there's two. This way we have it for the record.
Sure.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
With respect to that questioning, which I well understood, might we, if it's going to be reported one way or the other, determine whether those operations go on at night after 10 o'clock with heavy-duty trucks?
That's your prerogative, yeah. That's fine.
He already answered that they do.
Mr. Howard did?
Yeah, the prior testimony.
Mr. Howard, do I
My
understand?
response was I wasn't sure if there was any night operations
No,
going on.
not that. You said that there's nothing in the ordinance about those facilities having trucks on the road after 10 o'clock. They can
Other-
operate at night if they want to.
The noise ordinance that we have on record in town is the limiting ordinance for hours of operation and those issues. Whether the site plans have a restriction for hours of operation, I would have to look into each one individually.
Well,
Okay.
that wouldn't you consider that a SED zone?
Yes, absolutely.
What is the hours of operation in an SED zone?
The ordinance doesn't specify.
Is there any noise level in a SED zone?
In the SED section of the ordinance, no.
Okay.
I'd like to see that in writing, Mr. Howard, okay? Thank you.
That would be submitted to both attorneys too, please?
Correct,
Yes, of course.
okay. Is there any further questions from the board or professionals of this witness? Okay. Mr. Butler, I know you want to hold off on your cross-exam to the
Yeah,
end.
I'd like to follow the procedure we've been following for this whole
Correct.
application to cross-examine witnesses at the end of their presentation.
Okay. Mr. Dole?
Mr. Dottie seems mystified. If, no? Okay. I was at first, Mr. Chairman, because most, and there's no right or wrong to it, most times, the cross-examination takes place after, when it's fresh in everybody's mind, but
Yeah, but we've
you
been
started
doing
the
it
process?
this way. Yes, sir.
Understood, understood.
And before the next meeting, if I can get a physical copy of from Mr. Doyle of 08 and 09 that you entered into the
Sure.
record?
Mr.
I-
Chairman, just
And
so,
also for the board, too. A small copy.
so, for instance, Mr. Rodelli's testimony, Mr. Gazarovski didn't cross-examine him right afterwards.
Correct.
Correct.
They did it at the end.
The only person that was cross-examined at the same time was Ms. Sutton, because she lived in Tennessee, which
Mr.
is what we
Thompson.
did with Mr. Thompson.
Thank you.
Right. Okay.
Mr. Dottie is asking when would he come back, and if I understand the procedure,
That's
he would
up
be
to-
coming back
When you-
along with any other witness we called, all
At one
at
time.
at the schedules and Mr. Butler's.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Have a nice night. You can go. You're released. Paid the bail.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank
Dottie.
Mr. Murphy.
Mr. Trupley?
Sir, raise your right hand, please, and swear the testimony you give this evening, truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. Yes, may we have your full name for the record, please?
Yes, my name is Kevin Murphy.
And what is your expertise, sir?
I'm a licensed professional engineer and licensed professional surveyor in the state of New Jersey, licensed professional surveyor in the state of New York, and also Pennsylvania.
Very good. Mr. Doyle, will you qualify your witness, please?
Mr. Murphy, by whom are you employed?
D.W. Smith.
And in what capacity?
I work as a survey project manager.
And what does that mean, day to day?
On day-to-day operations, I supervise survey crews, review their field data, QA/QC their data, and then oversee the preparation of maps and sign the maps that get created.
I heard QA, QI, QC, and that's an acronym?
Those are procedures that we follow to assure high quality and high confidence in our information.
And for how long have you been employed by them?
About 12 years at D.W. Smith.
And before that?
Prior to that, I worked for Michael Baker, and then prior to that, Taylor Wiseman Taylor. I've been licensed as a surveyor for about 30 years, as an engineer for about 26 years. My degree's from Rutgers College of Engineering. I'm an adjunct professor at Ocean County College, where I teach Surveying 1 and Surveying 2.
And where did you first learn surveying?
From my father. We had a business back in the 80s, Tom Murphy. Murphy and Associates, Murphys and Sons. Prior to that, I worked for Fellows Reed and Associates down at Tom's River.
Okay. You did I'm sorry.
And I'm sorry, and you're being qualified as an expert in what?
Land surveying, I believe?
Land surveying?
Yes, sir.
Any objection, Mr. Butler?
I'm not sure what the relevance is just quite yet, but I'm interested to know what Mr. Murphy's going to testify to. He certainly seems to be qualified in surveying.
Do you have any questions about his credentials as it relates to surveying?
No, I do not.
And Mr. Doyle, I'll ask you to proceed.
Yes, sir. Mr. Dole, you may proceed.
Thank you. Did you render a report with respect to the site known as the Trap Rock Industry site in Keysby, which was, to your knowledge, the subject of some earlier testimony?
Could I submit this as an exhibit?
I'm going to object. I don't know what the relevancy of the survey of the Keensby site is to this application.
I have to agree. What's relevant?
First of all, we went down that road, and it was unchallenged, except as to the sufficiency of the proof of data that was put into evidence when Mr. Thompson testified. So, beyond question, it's already there.
But
You'll recall,
what's the
it was relevant then, it's no less relevant now. It's relevant because there was questions raised about the legitimacy of the method by which the map that was admitted into evidence was achieved. There was a comment made by you, Mr. Chairman, that if it was done by drones, it would be illegal and we wouldn't want to go there.
Sir, we didn't issue anything into evidence that night. That was not put into evidence.
The 06 aerial map, Trap Rock Industries, Keysby, Woodbridge Township, prepared by Thomas Planning Associates, 06 in evidence.
The map was, but not the aerial photographs.
And we would wish to put that in evidence through this witness, and the relevance of it, we would suggest is the following.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Butler?
He said he thought it was irrelevant, and I want to say why.
That's why, do you have any objections to that?
I do, and I'm sorry, I thought you were saying the relevance is the following, and then you were
Oh,
going to
okay.
say something, but then you didn't. So what is the relevance
RAP,
of?
RAP as a subject matter has been throughout these hearings. Mr. Kennedy testified similarly to Mr. Thompson, that it is a significant problem in the industry. Mr. Thompson's testimony, you will all recall as to that. Mr. Kennedy, from pages 56 to 58 of his testimony on August 27th, testified in almost the same language. RAP is a significant problem. We raised the issue about RAP on this site because there was no designated area shown on the maps that said that RAP could be stored. There was a bin that it could be stored. The testimony by Mr. Kennedy subsequently was, if we don't get the recycling B license, we'll put it on those 2 pads that add up to 4.3 acres. The quantity those pads can hold, and if they can't hold what is likely to be produced by a successful applicant-granted L&L, is an important consideration. We have documented evidence about this problem that would be created on this site and any other asphalt site that both Mr. Thompson and Mr. Kennedy said exists in the industry. And we have no better proof of that problem, how it grows, how much it is, and how high it gets than the Keysby site. So I think it's very relevant.
Mr. Chairman, I'm very concerned about the relevancy of this proposed exhibit. However, having said that, if the purpose or the anticipated testimony, the direct testimony, is going to be that on that site at Keysby, these stacks are X feet in height, that's it. You can't go further. You can't equate this to anything else. You can't use this as a measuring device for what is or is not to be on the L&L site. So if the simple, hopefully uncomplicated testimony is, I went to a site, I measured it using X, Y, and Z, and at that site, at the Trap Rock site, these are the heights, that's it. You can't go any further. And whatever relevancy that has, that's it.
Well, let me be clear, 2 things. One
I think
is,
I'm pretty clear on that, Mr. Doyle. You really can't equate that to L&L. If you go beyond that, I'm going to ask the chairman to overrule you.
no. Thank you. 2 things. One is, you said the height, I said the height and the acreage that was taken up, those 2 facts. Secondly, Mr. Murphy would also be asked questions with respect to the role that his profession plays and in an application, and specifically the standards provided in this municipality for the submission of a survey, which we do not have a survey as required by the Township of Howell application checklist, section 6, items 75 and 76. I think that the
Mr.
relevance of the need for a survey on an application and the completeness of an application is something he can testify to based
Mr.
upon his
Doyle,
professional
I
expertise.
believe-
Hold on,
Hey,
hold
hang
on, hold on.
Hold on. Mr. Mallon, did you deem this application complete?
We did, we had a copy of a topographic survey.
You have the survey.
Mr.
Part
Chair,
of the application.
Mr. Chairman, section 6, item 75 requires an outbound survey. Item 76 requires that survey showing the existing conditions and demolition plan. They have not been submitted. Mr. Mallon, in his March 20th letter, noted that no survey had been submitted and it should be submitted. That survey would, and I would, as an offer of proof why, in part, I've called Mr. Murphy, disclose information that this board doesn't have, and without that information, certain conclusions we feel cannot be appropriately made.
Okay, let me verify with my professional.
I have a 3-page topographic survey dated April 1st, 2016, which satisfied the information. Now, did my original letter say that was submitted, or did that come in subsequent?
I know Mr. Mallon has sat on that sideboard over there for many, many years, especially with me. and I've never seen him deem a application without it be complete.
Mr. Mallon and I have known each other at least the 31 years and I have a great deal of affection and respect for him. With respect to this application, in his letter, he asked that a survey must be submitted. There is, I would suggest, a difference between a topographical survey, which does not show physical existing conditions, which is the normal starting point for an application. If it's not here, I think it's a legitimate question to note that it's not here, what the importance of it is, and what's missing.
No, I mean, if this is a checklist item that we're talking about, is that what we're talking about, Mr. Doyle?
Mr. Doyle, is that, you're talking a checklist?
I
item?
quoted the section 6, it is a checklist.
And Mr. Mallon has deemed the application complete?
I thought the only way you received a waiver from a complete application, unless the Howell regulations are different than other towns, is by a request for a submission waiver. When after the submission was submitted, Mr. Mallon still asked for the survey, I thought it must have been necessary.
Okay, so Mr. Mallon, you deemed the application complete? I did. Were you satisfied with the submission of the applicant?
Excuse me, I did,
Mr. Doyle, please sit down.
well, if he's being called as the applicant's witness, your engineer, then I'll cross-examine him, please.
Sir, you will not cross-examine
Well,
him.
then he shouldn't be examined.
He's not. He's asking if Mr. Mallon, which is the same question I just asked. Did Mr. Mallon deem this application complete?
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Tropoli, at the beginning of this meeting, swore in all of those witnesses.
Absolutely.
At NJSA 4055D4, I believe it is, or 10, says that any witness is subject to cross-examination.
Okay, well, we're going down a tangent.
I'm
Mr.
taking a legal
Tropoli.
path.
Look, this is going off the rails here.
Right.
All right? Look, my suggestion, Mr. Chairman, is that we let this witness testify, let him say what he wishes to say, and you can weigh the relevancy or not. Leave it at that.
Okay.
Look, it stands to reason that this application has been deemed complete as a fact. It is a given fact. It's complete because it's here. We deemed it complete at the first meeting. It's a non-issue. There's no need to cross-examine Mr. Mallon. It's here. Jurisdiction's been noted, and let's move on.
Okay.
Thank you.
On point 1, Mr. Murphy, if I could show you the...
Yes.
I have,
exhibit there.
I have
got it
11,
right behind you.
I have 11 by 17s for every one of the board members
Thank
here.
you.
Can I pass them out?
Yes.
Let's,
Okay, what are
I'd
we
like to
marking
do first
this?
is mark your main exhibit as 010, and Mr. Murphy, we'll pass that out. If you could just go back to the lecture and put a description on the record, please.
Can you please provide counsel with the copy, please?
You have a copy? She does? Okay,
There's this right.
thank you.
That's 010, Mr. Murphy. And again, Mr. Doyle, can we get a description on the record?
So the plan is entitled Stockpile Height Survey, Trap Rock Industries, Crows Mills Road, Woodbridge Township, Middlesex County, New Jersey.
This is 010, correct?
010.
Mr.
Before-
Murphy, I'm sorry.
Before you go, real quick, Mr. Murphy, where is your base elevation?
We're working in NAVD 88 datum.
Okay, what is the base elevation?
I'm not sure what you mean by that question, sir.
You've got sea level elevation.
Yeah, sea level's at elevation 0.
Okay, so all of these elevations are
Are
based off of...
relative to that 0 in-
Relative zero,
In NAVD 88 datum.
okay. Okay, Mr. Doyle.
how did you conduct the work that led to the stockpile height survey?
The way we acquired the data on this site was we established using GPS methods several control points in the public road that leads into the site. So we remained in the public right-of-way. We established 3 GPS points along Crows Mills Road. We set a survey instrument, a robotic total station, on the point closest to the site, but still in the public road, not on their property. And we measured a series of zenith angles, horizontal angles, and indirect measurements with the total station to establish, basically using trigonometry and those angular and distance measurements, the elevation at several points at the base and top of several of the piles on the site. So there was no drone photography used. This was a indirect conventional survey exercise.
Given 21st century telemetry and abilities, is that consistent with professional surveying standards?
Yes, it's one method to collect data. Our preferred method would be a direct measurement where we actually walk onto the site and walk to the top of the pile and take the shot. But we didn't want to request permission to enter the site because we knew that would have taken a lot longer, and due to the nature and the turnaround time that the client was looking for the information, we felt that an indirect measurement, remotely measured, was the best approach.
What's the level of accuracy to this?
I would say these elevations are shown to the nearest foot, and that's about as comfortable as I would certify to them.
Okay.
How many piles did you find?
We identified three separate piles, basically.
Were they different in quality?
We weren't allowed to access the site, so I don't have an opinion as to the quality of the material that's there. I can say that the piles had various different points of elevation. We picked the lowest point that we could see and the highest point that we could see to determine the heights of these piles.
Is there any question what the piles consisted of, the material?
No, I mean,
I'm going to object to that question. Mr. Murphy's here
have to
for...
agree. I have to agree. Because did you physically go there and take
no,
samples
sir,
of the
we were
pile?
not allowed to go on the
Okay.
site, so I can't testify to what the material was.
You don't know whether that's wrap or not?
Objection.
It's speculation. There's speculation.
I fail to understand why a simple yes or no question can't be asked.
Well, he's speculating to what it is.
What if he said my answer would only be speculative, then he'd be speculating. I wouldn't want him to give speculation.
Well, no, I mean, it's not only that it's speculation because he didn't go to the site, but that's not what he's here to testify to.
No,
Well,
I agree.
And
I
that's-
don't-
as for Mr. Tropoli's
Tropoli-
instructions, it was the height.
He
height.
measured some piles, and he's gonna put the height on the record. That's
Right.
what he can testify to. He's a surveyor, he's not an engineer, and he's
I'll
not
leave it for
testifying.
the board to conclude that Mr. Thompson's unobjected to answers was that that's wrap, and then you could put that together with the height and the acreage.
Well, that's speculation also because Mr. Thompson didn't have access to the site at the time.
Nope, I would have,
That's why
that
we were
objection
going
was
down a
not raised
rabbit.
at that time
But
last
but
meeting.
Mr.
But
Thompson
no,
said, I'm sorry.
hang on.
All right,
That's why I didn't want to go down that rabbit hole at that time, was because most of that is speculation. Mr. Thompson also testified that he hadn't been to this site in a while. You know, he drove around it, but he hadn't been on the site. You know, unless you could tell me you had somebody go in there and do a sample, it's speculation. And we don't know. It's not.
Also, how long has it been piling up?
Well, I can testify at least to the date of the image that you're looking at.
Yes.
That data was collected, it's an aerial image, collected or provided to us by Apollo Mapping, dated February 19th, 2019. So it's fairly recent data.
And
Could you tell what the color of the material was?
Yes, it was dark in nature.
Okay, Dorkin. My other question is, do you have any geodata prior to 2019 or till this was done to show the increase of the piles or how long they have been this size?
I don't have that with me tonight, but I certainly could go back and obtain earlier aerial photography and provide that to the board if that would be of interest to them.
I just don't see the relevance to this.
Well, as I said earlier, Mr. Chairman, I think, just for the document speaks for itself. If the witness is direct examine as to what the height of these piles are, I think that can't go much further than that.
Okay.
And
I understand the board's ruling. What I don't understand is a month later, they say that the earlier testimony is now out the window when he clearly identified it as wrap and nobody objected to him saying it was wrap nor questioned whether it was wrap or not.
Well, we
But-
know there is wrap on the site, but I don't know which pile is wrap, which pile is virgin material, which pile they're using. We have no knowledge of that. I can look at this drawing and I can come to my own conclusions, what's here, but unless I actually walked out there and took a probe of each pile, I don't know what they are. I don't.
I'm just smiling and thinking of St. Thomas until I put my hands in. So, okay. I don't ask you to do it on faith alone.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Murphy, how high were the piles?
Pile number 1 was approximately 28 feet high. Pile number 2 is approximately 71 feet high. And pile number 3 was measured at 60 feet in height.
What were the areas of each of the?
Pile number 1 was approximately 1.5 acres. Pile number 2 was 3.49 acres. Pile number 3 is approximately 3.48 acres.
The chairman asked a good question before about the height and the margin of error. Please answer for the same for the area.
The areas, as best we could delineate them, again, without having direct access to the site, our preference would be to walk along the TOA slope where the slope of the pile intersects the natural ground. Short of that, we did our best at estimating or digitizing the limits of the pile from the most recent aerial image that we could get our hands on. This is an ortho-rectified image, so the distortion has been minimized by the company providing it to us. We also did a couple of QA/QC checks with some utility poles off the site to make sure that the ortho-rectified image was reasonably close as far as our ability to measure horizontal distances on it.
What was the existing topos out there? Do you know? Have any idea?
What the existing ground elevations were?
Yes.
In comparing them just to Google Earth, they were within about 2 or 3 feet of what we measured today, or most recently, I should say, late February, I guess it was.
So these aren't on top of anything? It's just virgin ground that these piles are on top of?
I cannot tell you what's underneath those piles.
Okay.
At 6 feet down, it could be a topsoil pile. I don't know. But assuming the way the plant is run, those are piles of material that they've brought onto the site.
Okay,
And that last answer, that's speculation.
yes. He did, he qualified that as speculation, not those words speculation, but it's the best of his knowledge.
Noting all that was said about this and what weight the board will choose to give or not give it, I would ask that this be placed into evidence as O10.
Okay, it's already marked.
Thank you.
Okay.
Did you have occasion to, and moving on to the second area, to see Mr. Mallon's March 20th initial report to the board in this matter?
Yes, I did.
Would you read paragraph 1, please?
Topographic survey entitled Topographic Survey Map of Property Known as Lot 6201, Block 177, Township of Howell, Monmouth County, New Jersey, consisting of 3 sheets prepared by John T. Lutz, PLS of Urcanis and Waite, dated 4/01/2016 with revisions through 2/28/2017. Note, this is a topographical survey and not a survey of property. The applicant shall be required to provide a survey of property.
Is the change, is the print on that last sentence about shall be required to provide a survey change?
Yeah, it's in bold font, or bold lettering.
To your knowledge, has a survey, as was said by the board engineer to be required, been submitted?
Not from what I've heard, no.
Okay. Now, without question, a topographic survey's been submitted, correct?
Yes.
And obviously, Mr. Mallon knew that, and he noted that was, but the survey wasn't, correct? What's the difference between a topographic survey and a survey, such as is mentioned in
I'm
the...
going to object to this whole line of questioning about what Mr. Mallon was requesting as opposed to what was required, as opposed to what the difference between a topographic and a survey. It's not relevant to this application, and the application was deemed complete, and this witness is a surveyor. He was here put to tell you how he collected data on a site that's not the LNL site, not his expertise regarding what should be required for an application, what shouldn't be required for an application, let alone what should be required for an application in the township.
Mr. Chairman, I spoke specifically that he was here for two purposes. Mr. Butler misstated. Number two, he said that this isn't relevant. Mr. Mallon thought it was relevant.
Who said it wasn't relevant?
Mr. Butler just said it wasn't relevant.
Okay. I'm trying to
Okay.
clear the record.
Mr. Mallon thought it was relevant enough to put it in the first paragraph of his first report in bold print that a survey would be required. I appreciate that he said that because a survey is, under your ordinance, a required submission item in item 75, but the outbound survey in item 76. Now, I think it's important for the board to understand the difference between a topographic survey and a survey which shows existing conditions and is a benchmark for what will come after that. So I would like, this surveyor, you have the ability to have Mr. Mallon comment.
I understand.
Mr. Butler had an engineer
Let me,
who did not produce a survey, nor, the applicant has closed its case and not provided a survey.
okay. Mr. Tropoli,
If the licensed professional surveyor can tell the board what the difference between a topographical survey and a survey is, that's as far as he can go.
Okay.
He can't draw any conclusion about what the Howell ordinance says, or whether or not this application is deemed complete or not. He can render an opinion based on his personal knowledge. He can instruct the board as to what he believes a topographical survey is, and what a survey, depicting other structures would be. Beyond that, Mr. Chair, I don't think he can go any farther.
Mr. Doyle?
Just on the point of his experience, have you submitted applications in this municipality before?
Yes, I have.
I'm gonna object.
That's beyond the scope of what we're discussing,
totally
Mr. Chair.
You said if he, no.
No,
Mr.
that's
Trump-
not
he
what
did not.
Mr. Tropoli said. He said if he could explain to the board the difference between a topographical survey and a survey, that we can't go beyond that.
I took what Mr. Trevely said, that if he has the experience, he can, and I was
That's not what he,
gonna...
that's
That's
not
not what
Trump-
Mr.
right.
Tropoli stated.
I understand. What's the difference between the two surveys?
In my opinion, the difference between a boundary survey or a survey as requested by Mr. Mallon and a topographic survey is that the topographic survey shows contours, spot elevations, information that's relative to elevations, where a boundary survey would show all the same things a topographic survey would show, except the elevations, the contours, spot elevations, etc.
What does
Now,
item
would it-
76...
Would that be pre-existing or,
Surveyors only know one thing, sir. Existing.
it's-
That's all we show.
okay, now would the topographical, would that show existing contours?
Yes, it would show existing contours.
Okay, now, boundary survey just shows the boundary of the property, correct?
Boundary and all physical features above ground and below ground that might impact the property.
Okay.
What does that phrase mean? All physical features above ground that might impact the property?
That would include utility poles, overhead wires, storm drainage basins, inlets. Sometimes there might be wetlands flags, buildings, concrete pads, soil piles, anything that's on the property is really the surveyor's responsibility to map.
So anything that is other than ground cover, such as asphalt or concrete?
We would show concrete pads or concrete driveways, driveway aprons, bituminous parking lots, sometimes striping, lighting, gas valves, water valves, etc.
Stockpiles of gathered soil material
We
would
would
show?
probably identify them in a very generic manner because, again, we're not qualified to identify the type of material, but yeah, we would show a stockpile or a soil pile or something like that.
Why, we've heard the word relevant, why is that information that is shown on a survey as required by 75 and 76 important for an application beyond what a topo shows?
My understanding is that you need a boundary survey to start the land development process. Without the boundary survey, you don't know what easements or impacts might be on the property.
Including structures, stockpiles, material?
Correct.
Mr. Mallon, I'm going to bring you in.
Sure. All right, let me just state, we have a topographic survey which has bearings and distances on it. The notes on the map say it's based upon a survey done by Apgar Associates. That is basically what I was looking for, is the basis of the original survey that this was based on. But the topographic survey that was submitted has boundary distances on it, has set corner marks, and really what I wanted was a copy of the original survey that they made reference to. That I can tell you, I don't remember seeing, but that's the difference. But basically, the information that's here is on the map, but I always ask for a copy of the original survey. And I guess that slipped through the cracks with this case, we never asked for it, but they did base it on an original survey.
If I might, Mr. Chairman,
Okay.
is that survey that was referred to as a reference dated?
Sure, August 10, 2015.
And to your knowledge, was it submitted?
To my knowledge, it was not submitted. That's to my knowledge, unless it went through the board, but normally I get copies of everything. But it was not submitted. But it does make reference to it, and it does have a note on here that by contractual agreement, they did not redo the survey. They used the one that from 2015 was a boundary, and then they went through and did the topographic work.
Now, in your opinion, was this designed based on that survey?
I can't answer that question because I don't know. Usually when you do a map, you make reference to a survey giving a date that they did. I take it that's what was put on the map, but bearings and distances, and then they did the topographic from there. I couldn't tell you that unless I had the original map.
Mr. Butler, do you have a problem supplying that
No,
original
I don't have
survey?
a problem supplying that original.
To both Mr. Mallon and Mr. Dole?
Not a problem.
Thank you.
And Mr. Mallon was satisfied with what was provided.
Right.
Correct, Mr. Mallon?
You're satisfied with what was submitted, correct? Or you wouldn't have deemed it complete?
Correct. I always like to see bearings and distances. I have it. I always like to get the original survey that it was based on.
For the file?
Because the note, and if he submits that, then that's fine.
Okay.
But he does have bearings and distances, surveys, set marked corners. That's all on the map.
Okay.
Jack, would you disagree with any of the information or the answers that Mr. Murphy gave? Not on the Keysby site, just on the survey.
No, he's correct. I'm not a licensed land surveyor, but I've done it long enough. I've done enough review of maps, and he's correct. Except I just wanted to qualify what's on this map what's here. But I agree, Mr. Murphy.
Okay.
And I've known Mr. Murphy and his father a long time.
Okay.
Okay.
I have no further questions of
Okay.
this witness. I did have a housekeeping, might I ask, given the judgment that his testimony was irrelevant, but he did testify to a little bit, when it comes time, did Mr. Butler want me to make sure I brought Mr. Murphy back to be cross-examined?
Yes, please.
Is it possible that, as short as his testimony was, that we could do that now?
No.
No.
I'm sorry, the answer is no from
The answer
Mr.
is no.
Butler?
Correct, Mr. Doyle.
All right.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
He's a local guy. He's local.
Okay.
The others came from far away.
It's 10:24, if you want me to call a witness. I do want to, before we close, though, I wanted to ask of the board, and I spoke to Mr. Mallon about it, at the August 27th meeting, Mr. Kennedy testified. Mr. Mallon indicated some concerns about the drainage scheme that was, or plan that was submitted, and that Mr. Kennedy was working with him and that they would continue to do that. At the October 22nd meeting, on page 6, there was mention made of a concept plan that Mr. Kennedy had submitted, and Mr. Mallon opined to the board that he thought it was moving in the right direction, and he thought the drainage issues could be ultimately satisfied. I don't mean to I'm not reading page 6, but that was the tenor of it. However, the evidence record does not indicate that that has been submitted. Jack showed me a copy of it, but I would think that should be marked in as much as it was commented on at a public meeting to the board and is about a central issue, drainage on the site, so, and be made available to us at the board's earliest.
Mr. Mallon, do you have a problem with that?
No, not at all. It was emailed to me. I had relayed to Mr. Kennedy that if he didn't give me a concept plan of how he could achieve the drainage and keep the water off of Yellowbrook Road, that I would basically tell the board that it's silly to go forward until we can come up with a concept plan.
Exactly.
And he did do, I think, a very brief description of what's going to be done, but I agree, there's no details, there's no calculations at all for the final drainage, but there is sufficient area to be able to hold the water and then let it dissipate downstream.
Mr. Butler, could you make sure that Mr. Kennedy gets
Yes,
that
I can,
completed, please?
I can have Mr. Kennedy submit that either through my office or he'll submit it directly to the board. I know Mr. Mallon, he has a copy of it, but I'll submit it to everyone.
I note Mr. Mallon said the plan, though, had no details and no calculations.
Correct.
Will Mr. Mallon, before the board makes a determination, get from Mr. Butler, his engineer, details and calculations?
We normally do.
Okay,
I
thank
also heard Mr. Mallon say that there's sufficient area, 13 acres, there's sufficient area to drain, to hold the water that is going to be generated.
But we
the water is
need to
gonna be generated.
get the
I know.
drawings, Mr. Butler.
I just want to put on the record, as Mr. Doyle's putting on the record,
Correct.
but Mr. Mallon also said there was sufficient area to drain that,
Yes.
You mean at
to
that
hold
meeting?
the water. Excuse me?
At the meeting?
Mr. Mallon,
just now.
Mr. Mallon.
Yeah, he just
said
stated that.
Okay, thank you.
Those are
Thank
good plans, good plans.
Okay, seeing the time, right, how many more witnesses do you have, Mr. Doyle?
Either 3 or 4.
How much more time do you need? Do you think we could wrap this up the next meeting?
I have an engineer, a traffic expert, and a planner. Each of those people are absolutely required for the application. Each of those expertises had witnesses from the applicant, I think in a responsive way. to present to the board a full picture of both sides. I need to have each of those to guesstimate what amount of time the engineer would take. Mr. Kennedy took most of the night. I would say he would probably take at no more than, but that much. In terms of traffic, Mr. Dean was called back, and so he testified twice. And
Well, I don't want to go to who testified and how long.
I
I
think,
want to know how long you have for your application, because I don't want to drag this out anymore. And I'm telling you that right now.
Mr.
So
Chairman.
let's move this case. If you can move and expedite your witnesses, please do so.
I will, Mr. Chairman, respectfully, and I don't want to drag it out either. Delay serves nobody's purpose, including my client. This application was submitted, I believe, in February. The applicant went forward
No, sir.
March.
May last year.
There's a
Submitted in
report from Mr. Mallon dated March 20th, 2018, about an application, so I would have assumed
Correct.
it was before that.
Oh, you're talking 2018.
Yes.
Okay, I apologize.
Sometimes I get it right, not often.
No, I thought you were talking
That one,
about
I
this
think I did.
February.
Yeah.
When you came on board.
And the applicant was submitted in February and presented its case through December.
Correct. A lot of,
11 months, and we've only been at it 3 or 4. I'm tired too. So I would like to be able to finish on the 2 dates that Mr. Tropoli told me at the last meeting I was to be at and have witnesses. We will have witnesses for April 1st and April 15th, and we'll try to proceed diligently.
Mr. Chairman, if the board wants, I mean, I'm awake right now. If Mr. Doyle has a witness, why don't we start him?
I
If we-
admire,
if
I
we start-
admire
if we start-
Mr.
We start for
I'm
half
sorry.
an hour, we end at 11 o'clock.
I
And then,
admire,
and then he has a half an hour worth of testimony underneath the belt, and then we can further move this along at the next
I
meeting.
admire Mr. Butler's youth, but unfortunately, I'm about double his age, and I'll respect your curfew.
I understand that, and I'm gonna follow that curfew tonight, because some of us have to get up at 3 o'clock in the morning. So, Mr. Tropoli,
Your call, Mr. Chairman.
what's our next available date?
April 1st.
That's not April Fool's Day.
That's not a good day.
And I need an extension of time.
Okay,
You got it, through the end of April.
Thank you.
okay, so you're anticipating possibly 2 more nights.
Yes.
Do you think we could speed that up and maybe getting it done in 1 night? Maybe stay in, I'll concur with I'll ask the board, we'll stay till 11 or midnight if we have to, but let's finish this.
The
Because
significance.
I know the public is gonna be a whole meeting in itself, or more. So, we gotta take that in consideration.
And
And I will buy Mr. Doyle a cup of coffee if he will stay later at the next meeting, so that he can put on 2 of his witnesses rather than try
if I
to.
had a cup of coffee, it'd be the first one in 40 years. It's un-American not to drink
Perfect.
coffee, I don't.
But, let's try
Jameson's might be a little.
to move it at the next meeting.
Chairman.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Massa is not available on the 15th, and I'm not either.
I understand
I'm
it.
going to be away, so
You're gonna have to watch the videos.
I'll have to finish it in 1 meeting.
No, but the public, there's no way I'm gonna finish it in 1 meeting.
Well, it would be nice if you could.
I understand that, but the public itself I'm anticipating it's gonna take a whole meeting itself.
Okay.
I think we're looking at another 3 meetings.
No, I wanna try to do 2 meetings, is what I wanna try to do. And Mr. San Clemente just advised me, he will not be here on the 1st, but he can review the recordings. If you got any questions. Okay, so we're gonna go to April 1st, 7:30?
Yes.
Is that correct? Okay, case number BA 1806, L&L Paving Company, Inc. will be carried to April 1st, 2019, 7:30 PM with no further notice.
And Mr. Butler's granted an extension of
Mr.
time
Butler,
through the end.
extension of time?
Yes, to the end of April, correct.
Thank you.
And thank you once again, board members,
Thank
for
you.
your indulgence.
Mr. Chairman,
Okay.
before we adjourn, is there any chance on April the 1st, we could start the meeting early?
Mr. Butler, Mr. Dole, real quick question for you. Professionals, Mr. O'Donnell just requested, is there a chance we could start early that
Early?
day?
No, but I can.
No, we'd have to renotice, wouldn't we?
I just have to put a notice in the paper that that meeting is gonna start at a special time.
Okay, members of the public, both attorneys, do y'all have an issue with starting, 6:30 or 7?
Even 6?
6 o'clock?
I have, just one second, I don't think I have an issue, just let me double check.
Mr. Dole?
No. I'm finding more and more boards starting, I remember when they all started at 8 o'clock. The number of boards
Yeah, I
started at
know.
6.
But, okay. Members of the public, please do not leave yet.
Yeah, I have no problem with starting at 6.
Professionals, do y'all have any objection? Is that okay? Board members, do y'all have issues starting at 6, April 1st? Take it at 12, that way you're ready. Everybody okay with that? Mr. Massa? Mr. Massa, you okay with that?
Yeah, what I'll do is I'll send you
Yeah.
a copy of the notice, you tell me.
Reluctantly, yes.
Okay, case number BA 1806, L&L Paving Company will be carried to April 1st at 6 PM with no further notice. So, public, just be aware, we're going to start an hour and a half early to try to get through this. Okay?
Perfect, thank you.
And we do have an extension of time.
Yes, you do.
Thank you, sir.
And thank you once again.
Yes, sir. Is there any further business of the board? Sir,
We're still in a meeting.
professional, any further business of the board? No, sir. Mr. Mallon, it's nice to see you all dressed up in green and, everything. Can I have a motion to adjourn? Motion by Mr. Moretti, seconded by Mr. Hughes. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed?
Hold on.
I'll ask it informally. I'm sorry if I turn my back. Did you cancel the April 15th meeting?
No.
Oh,
no, no.
okay.
We're starting at 6 o'clock on April 1st.
Yes, okay.
Okay, all in favor? Aye. All opposed? Zoning board adjourns, 10:30. 1.
Yes.
Legal matter.
Yes.